This is the Sourceseeker Hour, part two of Education at a Crossroads. I'm with one of my prominent guests, Dr. Cleo Wadley, and we're going to talk about the issues in education, which is never a dull subject if you're serious about the community, about the world that we live in. When COVID happened, it showed just how important teachers and education really is to our society, even though we don't get paid as well as we need to. I'm going to go down the list, but first I would like Dr. Wadley to introduce himself and just share with us his role in education and who he is. Dr. Wadley?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Cleo Wadley. I've been in education for 29 years, going on 30. I've served as an educator on all levels. I've been an elementary principal, middle school principal, high school principal, alternative school principal. I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor. I did my research on hegemonic discourses surrounding Black males in K-12 schools, where I examined those hegemonic discourses that surround Black males that are in society that also follow them into the school system.
Can you tell us what hegemony is?
Yeah. So hegemonic discourses are basically languages that are oppressive that surround Black males. So, for example, the ideas that Black males are thugs or hypersexual or hyperviolent or anti-intellectual, those discourses that we hear around Black males that are reinforced by media images, so media images and things of that nature, and discourse in our society about Black males, those exist not just in society, but they also go inside schools and affect how schools manage Black males and how Black males manage schools. So for my research, I looked at exemplary Black males because the research is replete with examples of Black males from a deficit lens. So what I wanted to do is look at Black males such as myself, because I always wondered, how did I make it? What was different about me? So from my research, what I found was that the exemplary Black males that I looked at in my study, there were four things in common with them. One was that they were academically successful. Two, they saw bright futures for themselves. Three, they were involved in extracurricular activities. And four, they were valued by their school community. Further with those findings, there were two things they said propelled them to be exemplary students in school. One was strong family support for learning and education, where there was no holds barred, that the family supported them and held high expectations for doing well in school and supported what was happening with the school. Secondly, was that schools with positive school cultures, where Black males felt like they belonged, they felt supported, they felt included in the environment and had their needs met. And when I believe if you combine those two things together, you will produce exemplary Black males. And what I would like to do is be able to replicate those systems in schools all across America.
Let me ask this, very important, and we're going to stay on hegemony for a little while. We're going to stay on that. What are the things that are preventing the majority of Black young men to achieve those high standards that you talk about? And I'm going to present some things. Just the peer pressure of society and how it's laid out in the subconscious way puts a negative mark upon the mentality of a young Black man and his growth. Do you agree with that? How do we address that? And what did you said the positive factors, you mentioned those.
Yeah.
What about that Black man that has difficulty? His mother and father are divorced and fighting, and he doesn't really have a home. He may not have the maturity to go through everything himself. Are these some of the factors that cause our young Black men to fall astray?
Yeah, so right, it's a societal systemic problem, right? It's not just something limited to schools. It's historic and it's historic and also educational. For example, the Black family is at the root of that. If we have strong Black families, we can have that support that Black males need to, and not just Black males, but Black females too. But my work specifically with Black males to be successful in school. It makes it more difficult for that families, that much needed family support to happen when the Black family is fractured and divided and at odds with each other and so forth. So those are the challenges that we really have to do is, and I call upon the education system, I call upon government, nonprofit agencies, non-government agencies to get behind healing the Black family, because when we can fix the Black family, crime will go down, educational gaps will go down, our whole society will flourish. And I always say this in my research, when I talk about my research, when I close out my workshop, I always say, if you save Black males, you save the world.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you overall. The problem is the Black family has been attacked. And of course, the root of that attack is the mind of the Black man. Because if you can hold or take the Black man's mind away from him so he is not able to work with a family, work with his inner circle, and he's worried about other things, just his day-to-day survival, it causes a problem and so forth. We're going to get back to that. I want to talk about the issues in education from a standpoint of what society says or what researchers say are the number one issues. They say the number one issues is government funding. I'm not sure about that, but of course, government funding, that funds the teachers, that provides the taxes and everything else that goes into running a school. The number one issue, though, is safety.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. I mean, from the aspect of your child going to school and getting beat up, your child going to school and being cursed out or being bullied or being caused to feel bad, that is the number one issue. And going right in line with that is discipline. Because if the teacher does not have discipline, they cannot effectively teach the children and so forth. Number 4 is technology. I don't believe that is high on the list because if you do not have safety and discipline, it does not matter how good your computer is.
Right.
Number 5, the question of charter school and vouchers. Let me go into this issue right quick. I was sharing on the last episode that I think eventually this is where society is going, that it's going to be a system of charter schools and choice all around. I think the public school system is eventually going to be phased out, and it's going to be charter schools, vouchers, and then how do the underrepresented get their fair share of that? Do you believe that is where our educational system is going? And what do we do if it does go in that particular way?
Well, I'll tweak that a little bit. I agree with you with what your sentiment is, but what I think will happen is very similar to what you see happens in Louisiana schools. I'm a Louisiana native, born there, and in Louisiana they have this system where you have the public school system, which is underfunded. The most neediest kids go there, the poorest kids go there, the worst teachers are there, the worst support, the worst principals. But then you have this private school system where all the best teachers go to, the parents that can send them, the gifted kids and the kids who have the means to go to those schools go there. And you basically have a 2-tiered educational system in the state. I see that happening, regrettably, in Texas, if the governor is successful in passing this voucher thing, where you'll see all the funding go to private and for-profit schools instead of going to our K-12 public school system.
But let me ask this.
Yeah.
If they're private, so they are a paid for education school environment, why do they need, or why do they have access to public funding also?
Right. So that's a great question. So the way I see it is that those who send their kids to public school, say for example, private schools, say for example, Governor Abbott's friend who happens to own a business. Well, he doesn't want his kids going to public school, so he says, "I want my kids to go to private school." But you know what? I don't want to pay for it. I want to spend my $20,000 a year money that I be sending to my kid to private school on my yacht. So you know what? I'm going to get with Governor Abbott to make sure that public school funds can pay for my kids' private school education, so I can spend that $20,000 on my yacht or my Ferrari or whatever the case may be. So it's a
That
simple matter
doesn't
of
seem
greed.
right.
It's a simple matter of greed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that does not seem like it is changing because there's not a great lobby to make it change. Uh,
I'll say
it,
this though, I'm surprised the governor has called multiple sessions to push this voucher thing, and he keeps getting pushback. So maybe there's a glimmer of hope that for us on that end, because he's been pushing the voucher thing, and every time he brings it up, even his fellow Republicans slam him. So maybe there's hope for us in that vein, but it doesn't look
I
good for the
think
future.
eventually it's going to get wore down, and
Yeah,
if he keeps pushing it, it's eventually going to get out there and stuff. Texas is still a red state,
yeah.
and I think it's a national trend. The
Mhm.
more issues we have in education, uh, there, especially with different things, different conversations. For instance, critical race theory, uh, evolution, those touch button issues that parents don't want their children to have to encounter, and they want to have a little bit more control of the environment. And I think that is where it's going. My question is, you said it's going to come a two-tier system. I can see that. I can see that across the board. But of course, education, public education, and let me say this: I think there's enough money. That's not the issue, except for teacher salaries. But across the board, as far as them having tools and different things that you need in a classroom to learn, I think there's enough money. The problem is that the system is so bureaucratic, and so many different ways of a child could slip through the cracks, and the discipline is not set up in a way that, and the safety is still an issue, that I believe that is going to go to private schools, but we're going to have public schools on the peripheral,
Yeah.
and that's where it's going to go. But if it does go there, what do we do, in your opinion, to still have schools that can meet the needs of our kids?
No, politically, really, educators have to be the toughest, most fierce voting bloc in the state. If all the educators combined together and got behind an issue, like they would win every election. If it just meant all the educators in Texas, I'm talking about teachers, paraprofessionals, APs, principals, became a united voting bloc. It was nothing that they could be denied. Nothing that could be denied. So I think that's the hope. That's what the goal is. And when you start doing that, these things that we talk about going on, they wouldn't happen anymore. They're being allowed
Dr.
to
Wadley,
happen now because the education people don't vote as a united bloc or at
Dr.
all.
Wadley, can I say this?
Yeah, yeah.
You shared with me you're now in HISD. You know the politics of HISD, or you've heard about it. And they are run by a state board now. They do not have an independent board as I'm talking now. So the political issues within educators and among educators are just as big as any voting bloc. So I don't see that unity happening for that vote, because we all different, set up in different cliques. You have Hispanic educators, you have Black educators, you have Anglo educators, and all of the above. So I don't see that being the way.
Right. But it has to be a big tent movement. It can't be, you're right, because there are silos, right? But it has to be a big tent movement. Like I think all those groups you mentioned, there's some common things they can agree on, that teachers deserve more pay, that schools should be safe. Like if they can get behind some big tent items like that, then you can make those kind of changes I'm talking about.
Yes. Hey, I start with the salaries for all that teachers have to do. You know, and I always say this: teachers have to be doctors. We have to be policemen. We have to be
Counselors,
everything
therapists.
under the sun
You're
at
right.
one time or another.
You're right.
We have to be a mediator. We have to be a psychologist.
Yeah.
We have to be all of those things.
Yes. Yes.
Somebody that has to be all of those things, I believe the starting salary should be 100,000.
I concur.
I believe the experience salary with over 10 years should go up to maybe 200,000. I believe the teachers that got over 20 years with a good record should be at 300,000. But because we are get paid from taxes and everybody is, you know, fighting for those dollars and so forth, it makes it difficult. But I would say, hey, let the money for the lottery and everything else, and some of that oil money go to fund the teachers. Then education will start improving a little bit. However, it's still deeper than that, because there are some very dedicated teachers who make 50,000 who give their all, and they'll give their all regardless. But the system itself makes it difficult to have a, you know, a competitive and a progressive educational system. Let me say this: educators are still leaving. They are, and not as many going to college. And I think we talked about this before. What can we do about that? That I'm gonna present you my ideals of what we should do.
So as a high school principal, what I did was that in our CTE program, like I created a educational program in our CTE program. So just like we have floral
What is
design.
CTE?
Yeah, so that's career and technology education. That's one of our
Okay.
programs in the state. That's heavily funded, by the way, by the state. And so I created a teacher education program, and that with a whole sequence of courses kids can take. And so we got to start recruiting at that level. We got to start catching kids that are in early in grade school, in school, to encourage them to go into education. That's where it has to start. We have to grow and recruit our own. Also, what we got to do is our paraprofessionals. And I've seen some paraprofessionals, like they've done a better job than teachers with degrees. I've
All
seen
the time, all the
yeah,
time.
we need to be making pathways for them to get certified so they can get into classrooms on their own. Like those are the kind of things that we got to start doing to put more people in the field. And
I
because
agree
what's
with
happening
you.
now is
That
that
is
teacher education programs at the universities, they're just closing those down. Like those are almost non-existent now at the university level. And that's how I got my
me
certification.
too.
I went through a 4-year college, then I took education courses, and I went through that whole process.
I did too.
That doesn't exist hardly anymore because
And
not
that's a
enough
shame.
kids are signing up for it.
Yes, and you mentioned about the paraprofessional and those other support staff that do sometimes better than the teacher. Yes, we do need to make ways for them to be able to go into education, and we got to kind of change the standards a little bit. I'm gonna come back to the things, the issues in education in a little bit. Education is a very important thing for any society, and if we do not concentrate on it, it's eventually society, and we've seen this over the years, society has started evolving, and it's not education's fault, it's society's fault. Okay, I want to. What is Common
One
Core?
more thing, sir. One more thing. Let me I
Go
got to
ahead.
switch locations. So give me about 5 minutes to get back on and join.
Okay, go ahead.
About 5 minutes.
Answer what Common Core is when you come back. But education is a very important thing across the board. And our society does not put as much emphasis on it as other countries. And I think it affects everything that our system does and the problems that we have. Because if you don't address that, then they start to manifest in other ways and so forth. So that's why I've done so many particular shows on education. And as a 32-year veteran, I have a lot of opinions. But when Dr. Wadley rejoins us, we're going to talk about Common Core and testing. Let me talk about testing for a second. Testing can sometimes be irrelevant. Let me say that again. Testing can sometimes be irrelevant. First of all, there's so many factors. Child might not feel good that day. And you put all that emphasis on the test, and they're not at the point where they feel like even dealing with it. And we go through that ourselves. And can you truly say that because this child passed this test, they're ready for life? Can you truly say because this child failed this test, they can't perform? I think it's too much. You need to have a series of measures, not just a written test, but you can have an observable test and characteristics to can they follow a 7-step routine, whatever that routine is. If they just follow 7 steps, that might be a criteria that shows they are capable of retention and different things across the board. So it can't just be that simple. Next thing, and we talked about this, is salaries. That's a very important thing. Tenure among teachers, that's important too. But can we truly say a teacher is bad and don't deserve their tenure? I'm one that I give the benefit of the doubt to all teachers. I've only seen very few teachers that I would consider bad. And basically, they fall out of the system themselves. So I give the extreme benefit of the doubt to teachers across the board. And we cannot, we don't have the authority or the means right now to remove teachers. And what I'm saying is, because we have such a shortage of teachers, we got to work with all the teachers that are willing to be in that classroom. Education across the board. Let me say, myself, I have 32 years of education, and I worked in the alternative area of education, and that's important because there are more and more kids that fall into that category. You have quote unquote emotionally disturbed, and then you have what's called life skill students. And both of those, that category is growing and growing across the board. Let me take a second. To give some mentions. Godwin Kingi in Arusha, Tanzania has Tanzania tours. If you want to travel to Tanzania, please check with Godwin Kingi. And he's at 255-769-047-888. Godwin Kingi, Tanzania tours. If you want to deal in real estate, buy your house, rent you an apartment, talk to Renaissance Realty, Daryl Malloy, 469-649-6274. Daryl Malloy, Renaissance Realty. Thank you very much. Real quick, I want to share with you this is Paula's Purse, our new show, Paula's Purse, every other Tuesday. The next show is coming up on January the 12th, Paula's Purse, unique item discussions to keep you together and in the know of what's going on. Paula's purse is never empty. Every item is important. Paula's purse. That's a screenshot promo. All right. Thank you very much. We're going to get back to our show right now. Hi, Dr. Wadley, you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. I was just doing some promos for, we are a part of the Sourceseeker Network. We have 4 shows that we do on the Sourceseeker Network. This is one of them, the original, the Sourceseeker Hour. This is our 145th episode. So we've been doing this a while. We have a new show that I just showed you, Paula's Purse, every 2 weeks. She talks about unique item discussions. Then we have Sunny Five-Side Sports, which we'll have a show tomorrow talking about sports and what's going on in the world of sports. And we keep up to date with that. So I thank you for letting me share that. But I'm coming back with Dr. Wadley. Let me ask this question, Dr. Wadley. What is Common Core?
Yeah, so Common Core is a set of standards developed, and mostly northern states use that. Like most southern states don't use the Common Core. Texas is one of those states that doesn't use the Common Core. But basically, it's a set of essential curriculum and guidelines that that is believed to be a successful attempt to have a unified curriculum across the nation. So say, for example, if you have kids who are mobile that go between different states that move, or for example, if you want to get a true measure on how well kids are doing, like having the same eliminate the variables of different curriculums when you do nationwide assessment, like in NWEA assessment or something like that, you can get a true measure of how the kids are really learning because they're all being tested on the same curriculum. So that's the purpose behind like Common Core.
That goes into my second question. Do you, as an educator, believe all children can follow and grow using the same standards?
You know, I think that learning should be individualized. You know, I think you can have, I think it has to be individualized on the needs of the learner and then the needs of the school, then the needs of the district, because all those different entities have different needs. So I think having a curriculum that's unique or evolved or developed for each specific entity is the best way to go. And we talk about individualized instruction for kids inside the classroom. Well, why is that not that same mentality isn't used for schools, used for districts, used for states? So I don't have a problem with that. But I guess my thing is that if somebody wants to use Common Core, I mean, that's good too, because it's not bad, but it's just been demonized as a way of, I guess some states feel like they're being told what to do, but that's not what Common Core is at all. It's just a set of agreed upon standards that educators across the nation said, hey, these are some common things we think that all kids in the United States should know. And if you had a curriculum that did that, this is what it would look like.
Understood. My next question, my next conversation is about, I mean, it goes into the one we just had, but I believe one of the big issues with learning is it's almost impossible to have information that is appropriate as well as constructive for every student. Let's take the issue of history. Once one group of students, their whole thing is we want to learn about George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, John Paul Jones. Another group of students want to learn about Crispus Attucks, Nat Turner, or their parents want them to learn about it. How do you kind of mesh those two into one curriculum? I don't think you can. But I think...
No, go ahead.
I think, you know, for instance, this issue comes up when you're talking about the statues and different memorials and things that some say, let's get rid of these particular ones, but let's keep these. I think you got to have some standards that presidents and quote unquote certain statesmen, yes, everybody acknowledges them. But if they didn't reach that status and have a negative impact, then you might can remove them. For instance, in Houston, HISD, I went to Johnston Junior High. Sidney Johnson was a Confederate general. So HISD removed him. However, George Washington or some of the other who made president, I got no, even though they did some things against Black people, I have no problem with, because they achieved the status of president, and that is one of the highest things you could achieve. And I think that is okay to keep. But how do you mesh all of these different variables into a curriculum, a unified curriculum for all students?
Right. So the key is this: with history is a narrative. And instead of, I think we've unfortunately taught history to be compartmentalized, where this is Black history, this is Hispanic history, this is, George Washington, these are the founding fathers. Really, history is a narrative, and it's all interconnected and related. For example, Frederick Douglass interacted with Lincoln. So
Yes.
like, that's a story right there. We should be talking about that interaction.
Yes.
So that's why I think all of it is important to know and understand. So I don't think you should just say, well, we're going to keep them out because they were bad guys. I think we need to know about what the bad guys did so we can make sure they don't do it again. So that's very critical to me. And I think that's the approach you have to take with
that's
learning
an
history.
approach, but some parents would have an issue with saying John Calhoun was totally against Black people being free, and they think, okay, we are trying to attack John Calhoun, and those that look like him today would feel uncomfortable in the classroom, even though we got factual history of what went on and stated. I guess we got to find a palatable way to make those who feel uncomfortable at least a little bit more comfortable, and those that feel that they have been left out of history and not, the story has not been told correctly, we got to find a better way to ease that information in and make it more palatable. Otherwise, there's no opportunity for a meshed curriculum. And as you know, critical race theory and issues like that has been a big and strong issue within our school environment. If you could speak on that.
Yeah, well, first, let me say this for the record. Critical race theory is not taught in K-12 schools. That's the first thing. Critical race theory is a lens through which history and society and the law is looked at only in graduate programs and doctoral levels. I didn't start studying critical race theory until I was working on my doctorate. So the fact that somehow critical race theory has been labeled this boogeyman is really only a testament to the far right resisting the fact that they're becoming a minority in this country. And part of their resistance is eliminating the history and voices of marginalized people or people of color in this society. So they do that by turning things into boogeymen. So now we can't even teach Black history in schools, where like now, if you want to talk about Ruby Bridges and what happened with her, you might potentially be in legal trouble or fired for talking about Ruby Bridges in school, because there could be a kid in class that say, I'm uncomfortable you talking about Ruby Bridges because it was white people that were yelling at her when she was trying to go to school. And it makes me uncomfortable that white people were behaving badly. So we're in a bad place right now where laws like that have gotten put on the books because of the far right movement in this country have taken over our state legislatures, particularly here in Texas.
Look at how many books they are banning. Books that back in the day, I mean, we grew up reading. I don't know if this book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, or some of the Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington, different books like that has such a meaningful.
You're right.
You know, even autobiography of Malcolm X, different things. These kind of books are being banned. I don't know if those three specifically have been, but I know, and listening to LeVar Burton talk about how many books are being banned across, and there's a movement for that to ban certain books in the schools because they make people uncomfortable. So we're at a critical stage, and it goes back to, yes, the voting block and different things across that board. But these are the battles, and these battles affect our students. And again, I go back, and before we finish, I want to say, hey, we have to find a way in the new evolving educational world. If it's going to become private institutions, do we have the wherewithal to manage and build our own private institutions? Do we work with our churches to have private institutions ourselves? I think this is where things are going. Do we work with a group of Black families or other families to build a community school for these group of families? I think that's where things are going, as well as there's going to be a greater homeschool movement. I think that is going to come about, because especially if you got more and more school shootings. And what do you think about what I'm saying about that movement? Then we're going to talk about safety in schools.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the case. You're going to see that, especially in an era now where schools are hotbeds of safety debates and concerns, and we do have things happening at the schools that they aren't the schools that I went to school to. Like, we didn't have to put fences and gates around things and make sure that there were no school shooters in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, the dynamic has totally changed. So as a result, people are going to respond to that. You're going to see some people say, you know what, I'm gonna just homeschool my kid. You know, but I think something's lost with that. But you know, that's another topic. But I think you're right, that is going to be more prevalent. You're going to see those kind of things happen more as we are living in this world where safety is very critical.
Yeah, and that's a shame too, but that's the evolving of society. Last issue, and we go through this issue every time, Dr. Wadley. The school safety, in my opinion, is more important than school aesthetics. However, given the benefit of the doubt, how can we have both? How can we have the aesthetics of having an environment that is not prison-like or not so confining and limiting where the student feels that they are trapped, as opposed to having a safe environment? Because I think it's a shame. If you look at these school shootings, that shooter walked from the street maybe 10 or 15 feet into the school environment. I think that barrier has to be a lot better barrier. I still believe we need to have a station or a tower that whomever is coming into the school has to go to, and then they have a distance to walk from there into the school environment. How can we have both, in your opinion?
Yeah, so, and that's tough, right? Finding that balance. So like, at my schools, well, for one thing that's helped is that the state law has evolved on this, where any school in Texas, your perimeter doors have to be locked. Your perimeter doors. And the only way they can gain entrance is through somebody on the inside has to give you access into the building. So
Well,
you
you're
just can't
familiar
come.
with Uvalde, right?
Right.
Well, you know,
Right.
she opened the door.
Yep.
So that's a human thing. And
Yep.
if you look at these situations, I'm sure you can find some human error and mistakes that have happened and so forth. But please continue.
Yeah, so that's one thing that the state has put in place for that. But ultimately, what it comes to is just people being situationally aware. And I think those errors you talk about come from people not being situationally aware. And when that happens, you can have the best systems in place, but if the humans in them aren't operating with fidelity on those systems, you're going to have gaps and you're going to have breakdowns. And that's like what we had in Uvalde, because that guy shouldn't have been able to penetrate the building. but he was let in. You had the teacher that had like doors propped open, like exterior doors propped open for convenience because people are moving something into the building, so they want to prop this door open. We just can't do those kind of practices anymore. And so it's about, humans you have to have a culture of safety in your school. And as a school leader, that's your number one job, to create a culture of safety in the school, and not just physically safe, but also emotionally safe as well. Both of those things have to exist simultaneously.
Okay. Well, we are toward the end of our 145th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. I certainly thank Dr. Wadley, but this is my last statement. In education, we must start adjusting ourselves for the future as Black families, as Black parents, start to build coalitions where, if necessary, we can gather our own kids and have our own school environment. What I think is coming to is that maybe 5 families, they'll hire a teacher, and for their 7 or 8 kids, they'll hire that one teacher. For instance, they might hire me to come into one of their homes and teach the 7 kids, which is like a homeschool, but it'd be a little bit more structured. And you got 7 kids there. I believe this is where our society is going because of school safety and then the curriculum. And I believe that across the board, and I believe this family teaching unit will be able to ask for funds to further what they're trying to do. I think that's where it's going, and it's just a matter of time. I think within 10 years, you'll have half the country doing some method of this. And I think we should get on board now and look for the future. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the public school system. I mean, the public school system, made me what I am. And I think it's a great way of keeping our democracy safe and healthy. If we protect it and nurture it and keep it strong, it's the only place where people of diverse backgrounds come together for a common goal. When I look at schools, I see people of all different races, ethnicity, backgrounds in schools working toward a common goal. I think it's a microcosm of what our democracy really should be, and what I would
totally
like to
agree
see.
with you.
Regrettably, there's a lot of forces that don't want to see that happen, that are working, and it looks like they're winning right now. But we just have to stay. We just have to stay resistant and vigilant, and that's the only solution.
Okay, well, we'll see how this goes. But I believe, and I agree with you, that is the goal or what a democracy should do. But in this age of so much, I guess, bias and so much different viewpoints, and everybody getting so upset, I think so many people are going to devolve into a comfortable situation. We will see how it goes. This is the 145th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. I want to thank Dr. Wadley. I want to share with the audience. Please continue to watch. Our next episode is mental health and the holidays, and that's going to be special on December the 12th. So we look forward to that. And I thank you, Dr. Wadley, for sharing with us education. We got to continue the conversation in different ways and different ways of presenting information, because education is one of the most important things. So I thank you for sharing this conversation with me. And you have a final comment, sir?
It's an honor, sir. I come to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you next time on the Sourceseeker Hour. Thank you.